Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a clear, step-by-step roadmap from our source material to help you transition from being a responsible saver into a confident investor, and we're going to do it without risking your hard-earned security. If you've ever looked at your bank account and felt like your money is just kind of sitting there doing absolutely nothing, yeah, you're in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this roadmap. We're looking at 5 main things today. 1, the problem with saving. 2, the math behind wealth. 3, overcoming the psychological roadblock. 4, the 5-step path. And finally, 5, stability versus freedom.
Starting off with Section 1, the problem with saving and why saving just isn't enough.
Picture this. You're doing the responsible thing, right? Putting $100 away here and there, feeling super mature and disciplined. But then you open your banking app and realize that 10 grand sitting there has only earned you 50 bucks. Over an entire year, it's enough to make you wonder if you're doing this whole money thing completely wrong. Well, as the source material points out, saving and investing have 2 very different jobs. Saving alone is almost never going to make you wealthy because it's really just stage 1. Savings are specifically designed to protect your money, keeping it safe and perfectly intact. Investments, on the other hand, they exist to grow your money. 2 completely different tools for 2 completely different jobs.
Moving on to Section 2, the math behind wealth and the sheer power of compounding.
To really grasp why you absolutely have to make the leap from just saving to actually investing, we've got to look at the math behind long-term wealth building. I mean, it is literally a game changer. Let's break the numbers down. Say you've got $10,000 chilling in a standard savings account with a 1% yield. That gets you an extra $100 in a year. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's certainly not buying you a private island. Now, let's compare that to the historical 10% return of the S&P 500 stock market. In that exact same year, your 10 grand yields an extra $1,000. Now, that is a noticeable difference. But watch what happens when we stretch this timeline out. Just think about what 20 years of compounding does here. If you just leave that 10 grand in the savings account, 2 decades later, you end up with roughly $12,200. Nah. But if you invested at that historical 10% average, your account absolutely rockets up to $67,000. Same starting money, completely different financial reality.
That $67,000 brilliantly illustrates a really profound truth from our source material. The biggest wealth gap in society, it isn't usually between the people who save and the people who spend. No, the real gap is between the people who save and the people who invest. Which brings us to Section 3, overcoming the psychological roadblock, or basically the fear of investing. So if the math is so overwhelmingly, incredibly in favor of investing, why do we self-sabotage? Why do so many of us refuse to move our money out of savings? Well, the biggest barrier here isn't a lack of math skills, actually. It is pure psychology. You see, saving feels perfectly safe. It's static. You check your bank app, and that number never just randomly drops 5% on a Tuesday afternoon. Investing, however, moves. It goes up, it goes down, and that emotional volatility totally triggers this deep, human fear of losing our safety net, which frankly scares people right out of taking action. The source actually provides a beautiful analogy to help reframe this exact fear. Think of saving like keeping seeds perfectly safe in a glass jar. You're definitely protecting them, sure, but absolutely nothing is ever going to grow in there. Investing is like taking those seeds and planting them in the dirt. Yes, it's messy, you can't see what's happening underground right away, and it takes some patience. But eventually, they sprout, and you end up growing something far, far bigger than what you started with. All right, Section 4, the 5-step path, building a safe bridge to growth. Look, it is completely fair to not want to lose your hard-earned savings. You don't want to just dump your jar of seeds out onto the lawn and hope for the best, right? So let's use this 5-step framework to build a nice, safe bridge across the market's ocean. These are specific, actionable steps to make sure you navigate the transition without the emotional panic that ruins it for so many first-time investors. Step 1 is absolutely non-negotiable. Before investing a single dollar, you must have 3 to 6 months of living expenses tucked away safely in cash. This is for the truly unexpected stuff, a medical emergency, a blown transmission, whatever. Why? Because the #1 reason people lose money in the market is just because life happens and they're forced to panic sell their investments to cover a random bill. An emergency fund protects your investments from your own life. Next up, step 2 requires a bit of a mental shift to bring down your anxiety. You need to completely separate your money into 2 different mental buckets.
Bucket 1 is your static safety money. That's the emergency fund we literally just talked about. It never, ever moves. Bucket 2 is your growth money. This is the money that is actually supposed to fluctuate. By separating these two in your head, when the market inevitably drops, you won't panic because you know your safety money is still sitting there perfectly intact.
Then there's step 3, which proves you really don't need thousands of dollars to get started. By kicking things off with just 50 or $100, you completely take the pressure off. At this stage, your focus isn't on chasing some massive early profit. It's simply about building the crucial habit of consistent investing. Honestly, habits matter so much more than trying to perfectly time the market.
For step 4, keep it simple. Beginners so often get tricked into thinking they need to be day trading or messing with options or getting into wild crypto speculation. But the simplest strategies almost always outperform the complex ones. You can use something like an index fund, which basically buys tiny pieces of hundreds of companies all at once. It gives you instant diversification, way lower risk, and steady long-term growth, which is exactly why legendary investor Warren Buffett has repeatedly recommended low-cost index funds for most everyday investors.
Finally, step 5, stay disciplined. The most powerful investing strategy in the world is actually incredibly boring. It's literally just consistency. If you invest $300 a month for 25 years at an average 8% return, you end up with $285,000. And just think about the breakdown of that total. The smaller chunk is your actual out-of-pocket contribution of $90,000. That massive remaining chunk, $195,000, comes purely from the magic of compounding. And hey, if you're sitting there worrying about market crashes, just remember that experienced investors think in decades, not days. Downturns are a completely normal part of the process. In fact, if you're consistently investing every single month, a market crash just means your dollars are suddenly buying more shares at lower prices. It's like a sale. This actually supercharges your portfolio when the market eventually recovers, fueling even stronger long-term returns. Wrapping things up with Section 5, Stability versus Freedom, and how to combine both tools. Bringing this all together, the earlier you can combine these two very distinct financial tools, the more powerful your future becomes. Saving successfully provides your foundation of stability. It ensures you can actually sleep at night when a tire blows out on the highway. But investing? Investing is the required engine that eventually buys your freedom. You absolutely need the stability of the jar to survive, but you have got to plant those seeds in the soil if you ever want to truly thrive. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a second and reflect on your own financial journey right now. They say the best time to start was yesterday, but the second best time is today. So think back on the roadmap we just laid out and ask yourself honestly, are you currently sitting safely in the saving stage, just hoarding those seeds in a jar, or have you already started planting them and investing in your true financial freedom? Let that sink in, and thanks for joining me today.